Sterm Worm, trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go. It's not what it looks like. It can't be. There's no way the kid got a custom neon trip of a lifetime sign. Is that not the illest shit you've ever seen in your life? $120 off of Amazon. This shit shouldn't be possible. It should be a far-fetched dream for me to get a neon custom trip of a lifetime sign. I should have to say, too bad I'm not rich. If we took all this human labor and ingenuity and focused it on something productive, like building modest housing and agriculture, then maybe we could end homelessness and world hunger. But instead, we have people going to work every day, wasting their labor so that I could have a custom neon trip of a lifetime sign for my stupid-ass podcast. Yeah, it's not just the sign, it's the whole new setup. I got my CDs now lined up because I have like a holder for them, and now I'm going to have a new Sterm Worm t-shirt every single episode. I recently discovered rushordertees.com. They make custom t-shirts, and you only need to order one of them at a time, and they have like mad comfortable material. They have like good polyester blends and shit. So now I'm just going to keep buying new Sterm Worm t-shirts, and like you can make them in whatever font you want and whatever material, like whatever design of the shirt. Like they have mad different options. Like they have hoodies and shit. You could get like Nike shirts. Like I could rock a Nike Sterm Worm shirt. But it just shows you how big of a farce that merch is. Like who the fuck needs merch? You know what I mean? Like you're basically buying merch as a favor to your favorite artist, but you don't need them to sell you the merch. Like you could just go to rushordertees.com and you could just make whatever your favorite band is or your favorite artist. You could just make a shirt that looks exactly how you want to look and feels however you want to feel with your favorite artist on it, and you could do it on your own and you don't need to buy their shitty ass t-shirt. But yeah, I have a funny suspicion that one day I'm going to be homeless with the neon trip of a lifetime sign, hundreds of Sterm Worm mixtapes, a bunch of Sterm Worm t-shirts, an espresso machine, a cheese grater, and an oyster shucker. Alright, so within the past week, I've gotten 5 hating ass comments on my YouTube videos, which I'd like to go over real quick. I addressed the haters on another episode that I haven't dropped yet, so I don't want to be repetitive, but what I'm going to say here is a little different than what I say on that episode. But the only reason I even have haters is because of residue from Kill Tony. Like, if it wasn't for the Kill Tony appearances, then the only people who would be on my YouTube channel are people who know me personally. But it's crazy how, like, you scratch the surface through that, and then it really does leave a little residual effect that lingers for a while. Like I average about 30 views a day on my YouTube channel. Like it wouldn't be like that if it wasn't for Kill Tony. But all the random comments on my channel, like on the videos, it's all people who come from Kill Tony. Like that's how they find out about me. Without Kill Tony, nobody knows who the fuck I am unless you know me personally. But it's rare I get 5 comments in a week, because that's what I got this week. I got 5 comments and they were all negative. I get emails when I get a new comment, so I'm always aware each time that one comes in, and I obviously click on the email to see what the comment says. Like I just said, I talk about it on another episode. I don't give a fuck what anybody post on my videos. When it's coming from an anonymous account on the internet, you can say anything you want and it just bounces right off of me. I separate comments from someone I actually know opposed to anonymous people on the internet. I'll respond to someone I know online if I know them personally, but I would never respond to a comment coming from some random account on the internet. And that's how I'm untrollable, unless it's someone who I know who's fucking with me. And I wouldn't even engage with someone random on Instagram, let alone a YouTube commenter. YouTube comments are even a level below Instagram comments, because you're just posting from whatever random username your YouTube account is set up under. There's absolutely no accountability. At least on Instagram, people have their own page where they presumably post regularly, so you could validate that at least there's like an actual person behind the comment and you're not being outright trolled. But that's on Instagram. YouTube comments are the epitome of anonymous and arbitrary. It's a cesspool in a YouTube comment section. Someone will say that they don't like a song, and the responding comment will be, "I wish death upon your unborn child." But whether it's someone trolling me or a real person who just doesn't like my music, I don't care. Post whatever you want on my YouTube channel. I'm not feeding it any energy and going back and forth with nobody. I will never respond to a random comment on the internet. I can't believe anyone with the checkmark ever goes back and forth with random accounts on the internet. They can't win. If you have a checkmark, you lost as soon as you respond. Even if what you say is the most sensible, logical, rational response in the history of the universe, you lost as soon as you click post. The only reason I'm talking about YouTube comments here is like as a source of humor and to highlight a couple points I want to make. I'm not like charged up by emotions though. It's pretty crazy. For the low amount of views I get on my YouTube channel, I have a high amount of negative comments coming in. Everybody hates on my shit. I always thought my shit was so undeniable and I just had to somehow reach a random audience. But ever since I scratched the surface through Kill Tony, I found out that the internet disagrees. All 5 of the comments this week were on the Cannabis Commandments music video. That video is the one that seems to spark the most negativity. No one seems to like that video. Comments come in 2 different ways, either as constructive criticism or just outright hating. In these 5 comments, 2 of them were constructive criticism and 3 of them were just outright hating. It's fairly obvious which is which. The first comment was, rhyme scheme is basic as hell. The second comment is, why don't you actually list the commandments in order like the OG song? LOL, you stated 1, then just loosely flowed and kept it together the rest of the verse. And then they did the palms up emoji, and then they wrote 5 out of 10. And then another person wrote keep bombing. And then another one wrote, I tried to press the like button 3 or 4 times, but it won't let me. And then the last one was, this shit's sad, LMFAOO. The thing, though, is the constructive criticism might be worse than the outright hating. The constructive criticism is like backhanded hating. It's like passive-aggressive hating. And they're sliding in unsolicited advice, which is the absolute worst. But the constructive criticism in the comments in my videos is always similar to criticism that I've heard from real people. So it's not like the validity of what they're saying that's in question. And the criticism is acceptable and comes with the turf when it comes from real people who I'm passing my music to. But if you're watching my music videos on YouTube and you don't even know me, you might as well just keep the critiques and advice to yourself, even if you're 100% right with it. I couldn't imagine giving someone constructive criticism in the comments section of their music video. And this is like a quick disclaimer. It feels like in real life, if someone shows me their music, I'm always trying to find something that I like about it to show them love. Yet I always get classified as a hater because people could sense when I don't like their shit. And like a lot of the time, I don't like people's music. But then when I pass out my music, everyone's trying to tell me what's wrong with it and pointing out the flaws. It's like when I listen to other people's music, I'm trying to like it. And when people listen to my shit, they find reasons not to like it. Most criticism of my music, I agree with what they're saying, but it's still always unsolicited, and I feel like when you nitpick my rapping technically, you're missing the point of me as a rapper and why I started rapping in the first place. My first album, it's this right here, called When Reality Meets Perception. The purpose of the album was to express myself, because I always felt to a degree that I'm perceived in life, and rapping was a way for me to show everybody exactly who I am. I decided to use rap as an outlet for self-expression, and the goal was to sound good while doing so. It was never going to be about how good I am technically at rapping. I just had to learn how to rap. So the 2 constructive criticism comments posted this week, the first one was rhyme scheme's basic as hell. It's definitely a valid criticism to criticize my rhyme scheme as a rapper. I'm not doing anything overly creative or complex, but I'm not out here rhyming cat and hat or tall and ball. I've heard lyrics that sound noticeably elementary to the point where it's a detriment to the song, but my verses are definitely not that. Most of my end rhymes, which are like the rhymes at the end of the bars, are at least 2 syllables, and that's what you want. Like if you're rhyming cat and hat, then you're rhyming 1 syllable words. If you're rhyming rapping and happen, then it's 2 syllables. It's still a basic rhyme scheme, rapping and happen, but at least it's 2 syllables. And even though I may not focus on inner rhyme scheme, if I went through all of my lyrics, I bet I could highlight examples all throughout my verses of syllables in the middle of the bars that rhyme with other syllables in that bar, or I could point out syllables that rhyme with symmetric syllables in the surrounding bars. So like all of that's inner rhyme schemes. I call it getting that shit jumping. When I create the verse initially, it's the skeleton of the final product. The memorization process is just rapping the verse to myself continually, and that's when the magic happens and I get the verse jumping. It's like a natural subconscious process that happens as I'm trying to memorize the verse down pat, where I tighten up the flow so it's not so clunky. It's kind of like fitting the pieces into the puzzle and giving the verse its true form. And this is when I'm adjusting words inside of each bar so that they rhyme. I'm not actually writing anything though at this point. This part happens all in my head because the verse exists in my memory at that point. but the original verse is always a shell of what it's going to become. So if you broke down my flow, there's more than what meets the eye in terms of internal rhyme structure. But like I said, if you're caught up in how good or bad my rhyme scheme is, then you're totally missing the point of me as a rapper. And here's the thing, the more I create, the more of a battle it becomes just to not recycle the same end rhymes from verse to verse. That's something I'm consciously aware of, and I try to do as infrequently as possible. I always wonder about like other rappers. Someone like Jay-Z has like thousands of songs. At what point is he just recycling the same words over and over and rhyming the same shit repetitively? And like the thing is, you could expand your vocabulary, but I only like to rhyme with words that I used in real life. I don't want to use these huge words that you would never hear me use in real life. So I mean, there's only so many words I use in real life. But I'm at a point where if I create 2 bars that rhyme at the end, and I know I've never rhymed those 2 words together before as like end rhymes on a bar, I consider that a win, and I'm running with it, even if it's just a 1-syllable rhyme, as long as I like the bars. Because mad often I'll think of some shit that I think is like mad dope, and then I realize, oh, I've already rhymed those words together, so I won't use it. Like answer and cancer. I know I've rhymed that in 2 different songs, so I'll never use those 2 words again as a rhyme, no matter how great what I say in between is. It doesn't matter how hard I think the lyrics hit. If those are the end rhymes, I'm scrapping the bars. I'm constantly thinking of shit that I like, but realizing it's a rhyme I already used, so I can't reuse it. And that's what's ironic about someone criticizing the rhyme scheme in the Cannabis Commandments verse. When I was putting that verse together, I realized like the first 4 bars, none of them are perfect rhymes. Like it doesn't rhyme fully. So since it's not perfect rhymes, it's only rhymes I'd be using once anyway. So even though it's basic, I like it particularly for my catalog because it's always going to be unique to that one verse. The first 2 bars I rhyme chronic with phonics. Like you see how that's not a perfect rhyme. Chronic and phonics don't really rhyme. And then the next 2 bars I rhyme consistency with deliveries. And now that I thought about it, it happens even more a few times throughout the verse. I rhyme high and 5, and I rhyme day and paid, and then I rhyme lighter and cipher, which is like kind of a rhyme. And I also rhyme the word cream at the end of a bar, which is a word I'm pretty sure I've never rhymed before, and I'll probably never try to use again in terms of end rhymes. But I think the verse sonically sounds dope, and you can't tell that those words aren't perfect rhymes. But the point of it is it's because they're not perfect rhymes that I like using those rhymes even more, because I'm never going to try to go back to the well again. It's always going to be unique to that verse, and I'm never going to have to worry about recycling those rhymes. And I think just the fact that so many end rhymes throughout that verse aren't perfect rhymes is just a testament to how it's not a basic rhyme scheme. A basic rhyme scheme is rap and crack or rhyme and time, but like it has to be a perfect rhyme for it to be basic. When you're making shit rhyme that doesn't really rhyme, it's not a basic rhyme. I think the question is, does it sound like it rhymes when the rapper's rapping it? And for me, in terms of that verse, I think it clearly does. I don't listen to the Commandments verse and think, damn, none of this shit even rhymes. And when at Natural Bridge 5330 commented on how my rhyme scheme is basic, I don't think he or she's saying none of it rhymes. I think the criticism is how each bar ends in a 1-syllable rhyme. But so my counter to them saying, oh, it's so basic, it all ends in 1-syllable rhymes, mine would be like, yeah, but it's not even basic. But what bothers me about evaluating rappers based on their rhyme scheme is, as a fan of rap, I never gave a fuck about whether or not the rapper had a complex rhyme scheme. It's something I never thought twice about until I started rapping and getting criticized for having basic rhymes, which happened from day one, well before any anonymous YouTube commenter. But it caught me off guard because when people critique me on that, I was like, you care about what words I'm rhyming? Like, I never thought twice about it. I never thought listeners listen to that shit and critique the artist on what words they're rhyming. I guess the more complex the rhymes are, the harder it is to do, so technically it's more impressive. But what do I continue to say? The point of me as a rapper isn't to prove anything technically. Art isn't always about who's technically the best. When I was younger, I was all about which rapper or which song do I like the most, not about who is technically the best or what's the best song. When I fell in love with rap, I liked the way certain rappers spit it and how their music felt. At what point do the technical elements of it supersede what I always loved about an artist, which is their sound sonically and their unique perspective? At what age would I start listening to music differently and care about rappers having a complex rhyme scheme? I never thought twice about what words were actually rhymed when listening to music. And show me the complex rhyming that Biggie's doing in Juicy. The same thing with Nas on Illmatic. I've never heard anybody criticize them for that. How come it seems like we listen to and assess old school music differently than we do music that drops today? We just appreciate it for what it is opposed to overanalyzing it on a technical level. Imagine Biggie wrote Juicy and Puff ripped it up the sheet of paper and told him his rhyme scheme was too basic and he had to go harder. That's the type of urgent legends you do hear in rap. Puff will be in an interview like, yeah, we was up in the studio for 16 hours one day. Biggie wrote 12 songs. I ripped them all up. Like, yo, you got to go harder than that if you want to be a platinum artist. And then if it happened like that, if he ripped up Juicy, then we would have never ended up hearing it. Like, and when you hear stories like that, who knows what songs they ripped up? Because you do hear stories like that. And then like along the same lines of having a basic rhyme scheme is having a basic flow. The two criticisms go hand in hand. I've heard them both. I rap the way I like rap to sound. As a listener, I personally like how the basic rap flow hits more than any manipulated flow. You're moving at a perfect pace with the beat and the delivery has more soul. If there was a noticeable lighting adjustment, I just had to turn my light on because I was just using natural sunlight from outside, but it's starting to get dark out. But switching up the flow aligns with mastering the craft, but it's not necessarily going to be more enjoyable to the listener just because you switch up the flow from song to song. I like Eminem, but I'm not like a huge Eminem fan. Eminem didn't inspire me to rap, and it's obvious by how I sound and how he sounds when we both rap. But when people talk about Eminem as a rapper, I feel like his technical greatness gets overlooked sometimes. But if you listen to his verse on the song Forever, I think it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. It doesn't sound like music to me. Even if the verse is technically amazing, I don't think it sounds good to listen to. Whereas I've listened to my verse on Message to God thousands of times. I could sit around all day listening to that shit. I acknowledge Eminem's verse on Forever is technically better than my verse on Message to God, but I think my verse on Message to God sonically sounds better than his verse on Forever. And as to why you would want to switch up the flow, I've heard people say it's repetitive to rap with the same flow on every single song on a CD. Like, you wouldn't want to listen to an album like that, would you? Like, that's what they say to me. And I'm like, speak for yourself. I've never listened to an album and thought, geez, it's the same flow on every song. When I was younger, if I bought an album of a rapper that I liked, it was always about whether or not I liked the beats. If I liked the rapper, as long as I liked the beat, I would always like the song. I never listened to an album and noticed whether or not the rapper switched it up the flow from song to song. Illmatic is one of my favorite albums ever to listen to. Show me where Nas switches up the flow on that album. The tempo and the vibe changes from song to song. That I get switching up. Like, you don't want every song sounding the same, but he just raps how he naturally raps on every single song on that album. And before I started rapping, that's what I thought switching up the flow meant. Just rapping on different beats. A rapper's flow from song to song takes shape around the beat, and to me, it sounds like their flows are different on every song. In fact, it could be highlighted if I rap the same verse over multiple beats. And as long as the beat sounds good, the verse will sound good, but the flow will sound different from beat to beat. I'll be rapping at a different tempo and my delivery matches the energy of the specific beat. The adjustment just happens naturally. It takes no practice, and that's what I would have thought switching up the flow is, but that's just rapping the same flow over different beats. Switching up the flow is something different. It's something like this. Like, the bar that I'll use right here is, I can hit you with the flow in many different ways. So like the way I would spit that, I'd say, I could hit you with the flow in many different ways. Or you could do, I could hit you with the flow in many different ways. I could hit you with the flow in many different ways. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different ways that you could rap a bar. You know what I mean? And then when people switch up the flow, a lot of time they do the cadence along also. But a lot of time, judging by the specific beat, a rapper will do something with the flow and the cadence. You know what I mean? Something specific to that beat. And that's what switching up the flow is. But when I'm by myself, I like the freestyle flows. It feels good to get silly with it using noises or words that don't make sense, but I would never rap like that for real. I'm just playing around with the flow, you know what I mean? It's not shit I would ever record for real, you know what I mean? Whatever words or whatever noises come to me, I'm just spitting out, you know what I mean? But I'm just playing around with the flow. Like, it feels good when you play with the flow, but like, I don't think it necessarily sounds good. And a great example of that is Kanye West, him on Forever. Like, he does stuff with his cadence on a lot of his verses. I think all of Kanye West's verses sound like trash. And his verse on Forever is like the definition of what I think shit sounds like. I think his verse on Forever sounds terrible. And that's basically what I'm doing in my car when I'm by myself, is what he's doing on Forever, but he's doing on a real song with real lyrics. And it is a talent to be able to do that with real lyrics. I just don't think it sounds good. And when you play around with the flow, it's almost like you're vocally dancing. A group of teenage dance girls would probably enjoy that part of the craft a lot more than I do. Like, that's what all those TikTok dances are. Like, those TikTok dances, they do those on tracks that they give them a little good flow and cadence that they could mirror it with a dance. But to put a cap on the first constructive criticism that I got this week, it just seems like I get overanalyzed from a technical perspective. I could put out a dope track that feels great, but people are like, oh yeah, it's a basic rhyme scheme. While household names like Jay-Z could put together any words that rhyme and is considered brilliance. He doesn't even use a pad. I know. He does it all in his head. He's a genius. Like, in my perspective, whoever figured out the process of brewing coffee is a genius. Whoever once figured out that the internet's conceptually possible is a genius. The engineers of cranes that allow us to build skyscrapers, those are geniuses. Jay-Z's not a fucking genius. If you turn to art, then you're probably not a genius. And like, on a public level, I know Jay-Z's considered a genius who could do no wrong, but in his personal life, I bet Jay-Z used to deal with people over critiquing his rhymes too. I don't want to act like life was all peachy for Jay-Z and everyone nitpicks Sterm Worm. And I don't want to seem like I'm hating on Jay-Z. He is one of my favorite rappers. I never like use the word GOAT, but if we're talking about like the GOAT in terms of rap career, Jay-Z is the GOAT. Jay-Z, I think, is the GOAT in terms of rap career, and I think Busta Rhymes is the GOAT in just being the best to ever do it. And then the second comment that I viewed as constructive criticism that I got this week was, why don't you actually list the commandments in order like the OG song? LOL, you stated one, then just loosely flowed and kept it together the rest of the verse, and then he did the or she, whatever the gender of the person was, and then they did the palms up emoji, and then they wrote 5 out of 10. He wrote LOL like you stated. What did I state? When did I leave a public service announcement stating I was going to list off commandments in numeric order? The third bar of the song I say, well, of the verse, because it's not really a song. The third bar of the verse I say the number one rule with this shit is consistency. So that must be what he's referring to, because I don't know at Forever Humble 36 personally, so they can't possibly be citing a private conversation that I had with them. But saying the number one rule doesn't necessarily imply that I'm going to list off a bunch of rules. People constantly speak and they'll say the number one rule is, without following it up with more rules afterwards. Like, that's a normal way to speak without implying that you're going to list a set of rules. On this track, he assumes that a list of rules is coming because that's how Biggie's verse was. But I didn't sit down to write a verse mimicking Biggie's verse. In fact, I think it's corny if I sat there trying to write 10 commandments like Biggie did. It was cool when Biggie did it. It's not cool to copy him. I'd rather keep the theme but just stick with it loosely, exactly how the kid says. But he goes, then you just loosely flowed and kept it together the rest of the verse. Like, yeah, that's what I did, but I think I kept it together pretty well throughout the verse. Like, all the bars are about selling trees. I stay in the pocket. I don't get off topic. The point of the verse wasn't to list off a strict set of commandments. I don't even have a set of rules that I followed when selling trees, so why would I make it up for the song? One day I was just chilling and I had 10 Crack Commandments instrumental playing, and a verse about selling trees started forming in my head. So I saw it through and created the verse. And then once I had the verse, I realized I would call it the Cannabis Commandments, and then I got the idea to do the intro like Biggie did. And like, let's say for the sake of conversation that both of these people are right with their criticisms of the track, what am I supposed to do? Scrap the verse because it has a basic rhyme scheme and I don't actually list the commandments? Once I have it created, like, I might as well lay it down. But I really like that verse. I went to the booth like, oh, I'm about to lay down a crack verse. And then that like kind of goes into like my next comment, because the 3 hating comments were, the next one was keep bombing. Like, I don't ever bomb. All my shit hits. I never fucking bomb. It's valid to criticize me at a technical level. I agree I'm not technically that good at rapping, but I'm nice as fuck with this rap shit. Everything I spit goes hard, and none of it's ever corny. But my question internally about myself as a rapper has always been, am I technically good enough at this to do it at the next level? But people thinking I'm whack was a thought that never even entered into the realm of possibilities in my head. That was why I was so excited to start rapping for people back in the day, because I wanted to show everybody, like, I can't really rap yet, but it's actually good. Like, it's not whack. I'm not out here embarrassing myself. I was always so sure of myself that I'm not whack. So it just totally throws me off when, like, now that I have random people on my channel and what they're saying is like, my shit's trash. You know what I mean? It's confusing to me. Like, that's the next comment. The next hating-ass comment was, this shit's sad, LMAO. Like, I'm so sure my shit's sad. I can find thousands of sad-ass rap videos on YouTube that are embarrassing to whoever put it out, but my shit's definitely not that. Like, I'll confidently spit my shit for anybody alive. I literally can't believe it when people don't like my shit. I have another line. I say, we clearly need a savior. I've been sent here to help. If you don't like this, it means you don't love yourself. And that's like how I feel when people don't like my rhymes. I feel like it's a testament against them, not against me. And then the final comment this week read, I tried to press the like button 3 or 4 times. It won't let me. And then they put like 10 crying emojis. I don't even get this comment. I don't know what they mean. I'm assuming they're laughing at me in some sort of way. I don't think they're trying to like inform me that they do indeed like the video, but unfortunately their computer is being glitchy and won't let them click the like button. Specifically because of all the crying emojis afterwards. It makes you think that the joke's on me in some way and not a real frustration caused by their computer issues. And then moving on to another topic. David Koechner was recently a guest on Kill Tony. So like when he announced the name, I was like, who the fuck is David Koechner? And then when he came out, I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. He's like the extremely silly guy from Anchorman and all those like similar movies. Nobody would know his name, but if you saw his face, you would know who he is. And then on that episode, a bucket pull had a similar moment of realization that I had, because somehow it came up that she didn't know who he was. And Tony stopped the show and was like, you fucking know who he is. And she was like, no, I really don't know who he is. And then Tony was like yelling at David Koechner. He's like, take your fucking hat off and show her who the fuck you are. And then like when he took the hat off, she was like starstruck, because everyone knows who the fuck he is, and like he's just like kind of like a big deal. But like, it's funny how recognizable he is. He's almost like a microcosm of something bigger than himself. He represents the end of an era where you just recognize somebody's face from the movies that they were in. You could name the movies that this guy was in, but you don't know his actual name. And everyone thinks he's hilarious, but no one knows his fucking name. It was like the beginning of the final wave of comedy movies. Now there aren't even any relevant comedy movies that drop, I feel like. The days of cult classics are probably done. You're going to have movies trying to sell themselves as the new cult classic for promotional hype, but it just doesn't happen like that these days. Maybe I just live in my own little universe, but I haven't watched a movie in over 10 years. I don't know, but I don't think the kids these days get excited to watch a movie or anticipate the release date of movies. Going to the movie store was such a big deal when I was younger, like even before Blockbuster came out. Like I remember just going to a movie store. I could stand in there for like an hour deciding what movie I wanted to pick. It was like such a critical decision to make a good choice. Then Bill Maher was recently on Joe Rogan's podcast. I have a lot to say about Bill Maher. He seems like a good person, but I'm not a big fan of Bill Maher. I don't know how some people get the public spotlight to the degree that they do. In 2023, I'm so sure Bill Maher is more relevant in the entertainment industry than I am. And I don't care what anybody says. And the only reason he is because he's an established household name. I've never heard any unique insight from him, though. And in my opinion, he's not funny at all. There's no way you're convincing me that that's what a professional funny person sounds like. In fact, when I watched the sets from the original Tonight Show on YouTube, I thought Bill Maher was noticeably one of the hackier ones. There are some people, the way they do stand-up, it just looks like they're trying to imitate what they think a comic sounds like. And I got that from him. I'm talking like, am I right, people? Or the, what's the deal with that? Like that type of vibe. But he doesn't have my favorite perspectives, which is what I'm about to go over. It's highlighted by something he said, how in his day of being a liberal, they didn't see color. But this new age woke liberal thinks race is the most important attribute of someone. And I could see Rogan disagreed and kind of pushed back, but he didn't want to like go hard against him, because I know Rogan's learned that lesson not to argue with people on the podcast because it sounds gross. And I understand the point that he was making. He's saying today's woke liberals are on that white people shouldn't speak and just admit that they're the devil type of shit. And like, I agree with the point that the woke group today is over the top with it, but I hate his I don't see color rhetoric. I don't see color is the epitome of white privilege. I don't use the term white privilege much, but saying you don't see color is a privilege of being in the majority. First off, what are you, blind? Even if you treat everyone the same, you're always aware of someone's race or ethnicity when you're talking to them. It's dishonest to say otherwise. I could walk around saying I don't see color all I want, but whoever I gravitate to just happens to always be white. It's not racially driven. It's subconscious and unintentional, but it happens. And here's my question to Bill Maher. If he's married, what did his wedding look like? And if it was all white people, then if he doesn't see color, how come all his close friends just happen to be white? And that's speculation, but generally speaking, weddings that aren't mixed marriages are predominantly segregated. They're not segregated by law, they're just naturally self-segregated. Most people who say, I don't see color, undoubtedly all had white people at their weddings. I don't see color is one of my least favorite expressions, and I have a lot of least favorite expressions. But more important than the fact that everybody's just aware of the skin color of other people because they're not blind. If Bill Maher was born as a black kid in the inner city and grew up like that, then let's see if he still says he doesn't see color. No matter what white liberals say, black people know that the color of their skin is the first thing most people notice about them. Bill Maher might think he doesn't see skin color, but he does. It sounds nice in theory to say, I don't see color. But even if you treat people the same, you still see their skin color. And even if you do treat people the same based on their skin color, the world as a whole interacts with people differently based on their skin color. Generally speaking, a black and a white person's experience in America is totally different. Bill Maher did make one great point though on the podcast with Rogan. He was talking about how he doesn't keep food that he likes in the house, otherwise he's just going to eat it. And that's a newfound problem in my life now that I'm grocery shopping for the first time and keeping food at my home. When I randomly wake up at like 3:30 in the morning, there's no way I'm not eating half a block of Gouda cheese. I don't even fight the craving anymore, because even if I do beat the craving and I decide I'm not going to eat the cheese, eventually I'll cave. Like, I won't be able to fall back to sleep until I eat this shit. And on that episode, Bill Maher was talking about getting the munchies from weed. I don't understand how somebody smoking for over 50 years still gets the munchies. And like Rogan talks about getting the munchies, I undoubtedly used to get the munchies when I started smoking weed, but weed doesn't make me hungry anymore, nor has it done it for a while. It only did in my original days of smoking. Like in my original days of smoking, I would like absorb food if I ate it. But like now, like I don't get hungry when I smoke. And Bill Maher made another comment on that episode that I disagree with. He's like fixated on some celebrity who came out publicly. And I say he's fixated on it because he mentioned the same incident on the last two Rogan podcasts he's been on, as if it's like something that he made sure he said. Maybe he likes to use it to prove a point, and it stuck with me unrelated to how I plan on doing something similar, but it just stuck with me the way he said it. But someone came out publicly or some shit, maybe on SNL, and it was like hailed as a courageous act. And he was talking about how coming out isn't brave, and it's almost brave to come out as straight today. In my opinion, coming out is like the bravest thing that a person could do that's not actually brave. Brave is stepping up to someone who you're scared of. Brave is a soldier going to war. Brave is construction workers working on dangerous projects. Brave is a firefighter going into a burning building. I don't want to classify coming out with having the courage to do something that's actually dangerous, even though being openly gay can definitely be dangerous at times. But other than doing things that are actually brave, in my opinion, coming out is like the next bravest thing that a person can do. Nobody wants to be gay, no matter what Bill Maher might personally think that it's popular to be gay these days. The possibility that maybe I am gay has been the only internal conflict I've ever had to get through, and is the deepest roots behind any of the issues internally that I may or may not have. And I'd imagine this internal conflict is the leading cause behind suicide and mental illness in America, and even if it's subconscious. And Rogan said someone compared gay sex to murder. You might want to do it, but you don't go through with it because it's a sin. If you want to have gay sex but you don't go through with it because it's a sin, that's a one-way ticket to depression and mental illness. Not getting what you want out of life and having internal issues is what leads to depression, and not accepting your sexuality will cause both. And Bill Maher on that same episode was talking about depression and said some people are just born with the chemical imbalance, so they need a pill. Like, the fuck they are, yo. We're all born with a unique chemical balance, and some people are going to be much more prone to depression than other people. He quoted someone who found no help from a therapist, but antidepressants cured him, and he was citing that as proof that some people don't need therapy and they just need medicine for their chemical imbalance. That's such a fucking bullshit ass cop out. I agree that you don't need a therapist, but that's just because you just need to open up and have tough conversations with your loved ones. But it's not like you don't need a therapist because medication was just a solution the whole time. Anyone who thinks like that, it just shows that they have a flawed thought process. But I think Bill Maher's rhetoric that it's cool to be gay and that coming out has become the easy thing to do is ignorant as fuck. Maybe that's true for people in the public spotlight, but it's not true for an ordinary person. The last thing anybody wants to be is gay. And it's recorded. Anyone could hear how smug he sounds when he says it on 2 different episodes. In his defense, though, he was 100% right when he said trans and gay are conceptually counter to each other, because being gay is saying I was born this way, I can't help it, and being trans is saying I was born incorrectly. And like, I do understand how they get classified together because they exist on the fringes of one another, but conceptually they are counter to each other, and he's right about that. But they were talking on that podcast about whether being gay is something you're born with or whether it's a choice. I truly believe it's not either. In terms of getting turned on sexually, we're in autopilot mode. We're piloting the ship, but we have no control over it. In fact, it takes control over us. What turns us on turns us on. It's like a force of its own. No one chooses what gets them excited sexually, but you gotta roll with it, whatever it is. I don't choose to be turned on by gay thoughts, but I choose to switch my X videos feed to the gay option and jerk off to dicks and cum sometimes. I choose to jerk off to it. I don't choose to be turned on by it. And people who live a gay lifestyle don't choose to be turned on by the same gender, but they choose to hook up with the same gender. So I don't think your sexuality is a choice, because no one chooses what they're turned on by. The choice is whether or not you're going to embrace it internally and whether or not to live an honest life externally. But I also don't think there's this hard line where people are either born straight or gay. My sexual arousal isn't straight, but I think girls are hot, and I honestly don't believe I was born this other way where I only love men. Like, physically, I like girls, but mentally, I get aroused by gay thoughts, and that's just a truth of my existence. For me personally, what turns me on sexually directly aligns with who I am as a person. I usually think the norm is corny, and I get excited when I do things that go against the grain, and that's exactly what my sexuality is. The more taboo something is, the more arousing it's going to be to me, and I always need to push the limits to the extreme with everything. Like, some people get excited rooting for their favorite team. I need to bet $500 to get excited rooting for a team, you know what I mean? So it's like I always need to push the limits. So it's not shocking that I need to push the limits sexually to get turned on, even though I like girls, you know what I mean? And like, I think girls are hot. I physically get turned on by girls very often, and I emotionally like girls, but I can't deny that this one thought turns me on, you know what I mean? I think our sexuality is controlled by a combination of nature and nurture, and I think our genetics and our life creates the perfect storm of just what we find arousing. And the point being, I do get aroused by gay thoughts, but I don't think there's some cut and dry truth that I was born gay and only capable of loving men. There's forces at play affecting our sexuality and pushing us in a certain direction sexually, and our intimacy and identity just follows that, in my opinion. So I believe what's going to eventually turn you on is essentially predetermined at birth and slightly shaped by your life, But the illusion that there's a hard line between straight and gay and you're born one way or the other, I think is inaccurate. I don't think there's a cut and dry truth whether you're born straight or gay, but I do think there are factors that play into each other that make you more excited sexually by the same gender or by the opposite one, but no one chooses what turns them on sexually or who they fall in love with. And I think people generally fall in love with who they get sexual with. And my theory is it's people like me and Bill Maher who exist on the fringes sexually because we lack masculinity and performance ability. And it's more than internally. People like me and Bill Maher just don't turn girls on as much like someone like The Rock. And there's an ignored reciprocal balance of that. It's such a turn on to see a girl actually excited and turned on. So if you're not turning girls on, then you're not getting that to feed off of. The less masculine a man is, the less primal his intercourse is going to be. And feeling primal is what you're going for sexually. Generally speaking, I think your masculinity or femininity directly correlates with your sexuality. So the point is when Bill Maher's like, it's so easy to be gay these days, life is so tough for us straight people, he might actually be subconsciously trying to deflect without even realizing it. Whenever like a guy is always trying to like point out how hot girls are, I always think that they want dick. And like I said, it might all be subconscious. And since I'm talking about gay sex, it's easy to bridge it to Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. I just mentioned on a recent episode how gay Taylor Swift's career and publicity makes her sex life and how her and Kelce apparently have a thing. Well, it's like really a thing now, and it's like over the top gay, yo. It has taken over society. When I recorded the episode talking about them, it was just like a little rumor, like it wasn't like official or anything. But then the day after I recorded the episode, she was filmed at the Chiefs game cheering on Travis Kelce every time he made a catch, like it was like the homecoming game in high school. And their love affair has been like the hottest gossip ever since. It's everywhere I go, yo. It's literally the gay shit ever. The publicity surrounding their relationship is the microcosm of everything that I think is gay about people in the straight universe. If you blush when asking questions like what's new in the Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift love affair, then I'd hate to break it to you, but you're gay. When I say shit in life is gay as fuck, the publicity surrounding their love affair is the epitome of it. It's cool for the love of my life to be excited for me like that, but that energy doesn't make me want to fuck somebody. And when everyone's blushing at me like I saw Taylor was cheering for you the other day at your game, it makes me want to fuck her even less, yo. It's all so fucking gay, yo. When I talk about nurture affecting our sexuality, this is a prime example of it. How dynamics surrounding a situation just don't make it arousing sexually. When the energy surrounding you and a girl is, so did you kiss her? It's so fucking gay and corny and not arousing. And if you've heard all the Taylor Swift jokes and comments I've heard on the radio shows and TV broadcasts that I watch, it's over the top and cringeworthy. It would have to be the baddest bitch alive for me to still be excited to want to fuck her, yo, through that windstorm of corniness. I always say like it's the nature of homosexual sex that's so arousing. And I want to say gay sex, but gay sex to me is something different. Gay sex is two married people who have like sex once a year on their birthdays. That's gay sex. So I'll call it homosexual sex. Most homosexual sex is probably straight. And homosexual sex and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's love affair are like polar opposites on whether or not the dynamics of the situation are arousing. But he's a world-class athlete, so he'll still perform and fuck the shit out of her. I said it on the last episode that I wouldn't even want to fuck her. And I literally like couldn't even fuck her. If that makes me gay, then I'm gay. But I don't think Taylor Swift's hot, yo. There's nothing about her that turns me on. She looks like a goddess for basic white chicks. She's like the basic white chick. And I'm not exaggerating when I say if I go out on 6th Street during like a Texas game or on a weekend night, I will see hundreds of girls that I'd rather fuck than Taylor Swift. Hundreds of girls. Like on a weekend night, if you go to 6th Street, you will walk by hundreds of girls that I would rather hook up with than Taylor Swift. And Travis Kelce's jersey sales went up 400% this week because I guess all the 10-year-old Taylor Swift fans want to buy his jersey now. Is that not the gayest shit ever? And like I've heard on like talk radio shows, like they're like reading posts like that all these basic white girls are posting. Like this one girl the other day, her tweet was, what's a field goal? Like it's all the gay shit ever, you know what I mean? Like if I'm Travis Kelce, like none of this shit makes me want to fuck her, yo. And the only way that I could get through all of this coyness is if she's hot as fuck, but she's not, yo. There's no way Taylor Swift is fucking hot, yo. The gay straight universe wants you to think Taylor Swift is hot. I just think the nature of our lives is getting gayer as a society, and that's why there's a higher population population rate of gay people. It's like, yeah, what's going on with Taylor Swift in the public with Travis Kelce, it's not going to turn Travis Kelce gay, but that energy exists in the real world right now is what turns people gay. I truly believe, it makes people more excited to just have naughty, dirty gay sex. People's internal wiring, I think, shifts as the society shifts. As generations pass, it goes from parents not wanting their daughter to be a slut to parents hoping their daughter meets a nice boy. It's like it moves the goalposts on what's taboo and being bad or naughty. And then moving from gay sex to straight sex life, Drake is in the 1% of the 1% in terms of having the opportunity to live a straight sex life. I'd imagine his sex life is straight as fuck. But with that said, I just heard a line on that song Forever, which I mentioned earlier because I recently heard it. That's why I keep mentioning it. But on the bridge of the song, Drake said something that epitomized everything that I don't like about the climate of today's hookup world. He said, telling that girl she's the one for me, but I ain't even planning to call. And like, as long as that's glorified and chicks fuck with dudes saying that type of shit, they shouldn't be shocked when they're crying every single night because she thought some guy was in love with her and she found out that he's fucking another chick. Girls like those guys because they're unpredictable, and that might honestly be why guys do it. It's subconscious because chicks like unpredictable dudes, so they give them what they want. But unless that's the reason and it's some subconscious strategic mating shit, then I don't understand why dudes are on that shit telling a girl that they're the one for them when they ain't even planning to call. Like, just keep it real. Why would you tell her that she's the one for you when you don't plan to call her? It's like, why play somebody when you don't even have to? And if you're so straight and the pussy's so good, then how come you don't want to hit it again? And the fact that everybody's always playing everybody is probably a major reason why there's a lack of communication, in my opinion, in hookups these days. Like, obviously, when people have a girlfriend, there's probably not as much lack of communication, but in terms of just like a one night hookup, it feels like there's like lack of communication. It's always like, just get her drunk enough, maybe she'll hook up with you. Like, if I have to get a girl drunk enough to hook up with me, then I don't want to hook up with her. You know what I mean? Like, I want to hook up with someone who actually wants to hook up with me. And that's another thing that turns me on about gay sex. Like, it makes me feel attractive. That's something that gets looked over when we talk about arousal. Like, people who don't feel attractive don't get as easily aroused. Feeling attractive goes hand in hand with arousal. And I feel attractive to gay dudes. I don't feel attractive to girls. It feels like no girls ever want to fuck me. But if I'm Drake, I'm up front with girls like, I'm the biggest rap star in the world right now. I'm the wrong dude if you're out here looking for the one. Let's just hook up. But I think a lot of what I talk about with arousal is what's going on with why dudes act the way they do with girls. Like, I think dudes get off to playing chicks. I think girls are hot, but I think sometimes you still need some extra juice to spark your system and turn you on in the moment. And you got to inject a little bit of excitement. And I think dudes do that by playing chicks, like telling them that they love them when they're actually thinking, fuck this hoe. I think guys get off to playing girls like that. People get aroused by manipulating other people. Like, that's what trolling is. Not sexually, but it turns trolls on when they know they played with somebody's emotions. They love it when they get the reward of seeing somebody react how they wanted them to. But everything in life is relative, and it's similar excitement that people get from manipulating someone they're hooking up with emotionally, and they might feed off of that for sexual arousal. But like I was saying, if I was in Drake's position, I wouldn't be lying to chicks. He has the life that I want. For the most part, he could hook up with whoever he wants, and they're going to be mad excited to be hooking up with him. He doesn't have to follow like the first date guidelines and etiquette and walk on eggshells. The hookups could be like the type of hookups I want, where you're like spitting on each other, or you're like fucking her with the dildo and licking the pussy juices off of it. You know what I mean? Like, if your relationship stems from the conventional dating life, then it's just not going to go that route. But those are just examples of shit that I found arousing that doesn't happen in traditional hookups with minimal vocal communication. But the point is, Drake could hook up with whoever he wants. They're excited to hook up with him. He could take it wherever he wants to. And since he's Drake, these girls probably don't have expectations on the future. But instead, he's telling them that they're the one for him. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Something I'm going to get to is people doing stuff in life that just makes no sense. Like lying to chicks that you're hooking up with, telling them that you love them, unless you're getting turned on by playing them. And I hate how it's glorified to play chicks. It's like, yeah, yo, I hit it and I never called her again. And you get cheered on and praised for that. It's like, I'd rather a girl that I did want to call again and didn't want to make fun of with my friends. But the cool thing to do today is to hook up with a girl, never call her again, and make fun of her with your friends. And I think that's corny as fuck, and that culture is non-conducive to the type of hookups that I find arousing. The type of hookups I find arousing is like, let's keep what we did between us and not tell anybody. And then the next topic, there's an open micer comedian out here who just killed himself. I want to use it to highlight a couple points. And I feel bad making light of it, even though I am kind of right now, but I couldn't imagine telling everyone oh yeah, I'm moving out to Austin to pursue my dreams and do what I love, and then within 2 years I kill myself. When I moved out here, I told everybody everything was under control and I am where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I couldn't kill myself because I couldn't validate everyone who thought I was lost as fuck when I moved out here. You know what I mean? I had to prove them wrong and act like I'm doing good. And Hans Kim was friends with this kid, so he made an RIP post about it on Instagram, and there was people joking around in the comments, and someone replied, guys, someone died. This is no time for jokes. If you make that type of post, then you're just the worst of the worst. You're absolutely insufferable. Hans Kim's Instagram is a public page. Once your shit's public, it becomes a cesspool, and people could post whatever they want. And it's not even Hans Kim, it's someone who doesn't know Hans Kim and doesn't know the other kid, who just wants to get on his high horse. But if you don't want people making jokes in the comments of an RIP post, then don't post it on a public page. And like I said, it's not Hans Kim who's saying that. It's just some random kid. But I'm just saying, if you want your comment section to stay normal, make it a private page. Keep a private account where you have to accept friend requests. And like I just said, it obviously wasn't Hans Kim. Stop, my friend died. It was someone random. So when you're on someone else's page and you see people fucking around in the comment section, you really shouldn't get your panties in a bunch over. It's just further proof that everybody just wants to be mad and are looking for a reason to be mad. But I have a strong point of view on suicide. There's exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, if you have kids or parents alive, I don't think you should kill yourself. If you have kids, I don't care what internal issues you have. You have a responsibility, and you owe it to your kids to be there for them to the best of your ability. I couldn't kill myself knowing I'm leaving kids behind and leaving them with the feeling that their love wasn't enough for me. Even if you have internal issues, you owe it to your kids to always be there for them and never to put them through that. It's a responsibility you created for yourself by having kids. No offense to Anthony Bourdain, but I'm against what he did. Exceptions exist, but I would have to hear a great explanation as to why someone found the need that they had to kill themselves when they had kids alive. And then if you don't have kids, if your internal issues run so deep, then I think you have the right to kill yourself. But if you love your parents, then you shouldn't do it because of the pain that it'll cause them. Tristan Bowling is a Kill Tony golden ticket winner. And I feel bad using him to highlight a couple points, but I mean, he throws everything out there publicly. But Tristan Bowling said on a Kill Tony episode recently that he tried to kill himself, and the reason was because of a girl. No offense to him, but I have a problem with that on so many levels. I get how you get so into somebody and caught up in the moment that you can't see living without them, and I don't know the surrounding circumstances, but unless it's something equivalent to a spouse cheating on you, how are you going to kill yourself because a girl broke up with you? I also wouldn't kill myself over a girl because I wouldn't want to put that on the girl. I wouldn't want to make her live with that on her conscience, and if you actually live through it, now she's never going to get back with you. But even more than that, I wouldn't want to do that to my parents. I'm too important to my parents to kill myself because some girl doesn't want me. If you have parents who unconditionally love you, then I think you owe it to them to not kill yourself while they're alive, unless you have an internal issue that runs so deep that it's eating you alive, and your parents have to understand you did what you had to do and you're finally at peace. And it comes back to what I was saying before. The only internal issue that I could make sense of being so serious that it warrants somebody killing themselves is sexuality struggles. If it's not that, in terms of internal issues, what could possibly haunt somebody so badly that it makes them want to kill themselves? Or if you believe you were born as the wrong gender, I could see that making somebody suicidal. But an issue along those lines where you don't feel comfortable in your own skin is the only type of internal issue that I get would make somebody want to kill themselves. So I'm against suicide if you have children or parents that live for you. But if you have no parents alive and you have no kids, if you want to kill yourself, my opinion changes, and I think you should be allowed to do it, and you should be able to get it done legally. I get how it doesn't sit right with people morally, but if that's what somebody wants and their life is just a burden on the system, then we should assist them in their request to do it easily and peacefully. If I never have kids when my parents die, if I could keep existing the way I do now, I'm totally straight with that, and I'll live as long as I keep breathing. But if self-driving cars take over and I fall off financially, my parents are deceased, and I'm on the brink of homelessness at like 80 years old because I can't find adequate work and keep my head above water financially, and the only people alive that I'm connected to at that point are my friends that I probably don't talk to it all anymore, there should be an outlet for me to have an assisted suicide. Either guarantee senior citizens resources like food and shelter, or give them an outlet for assisted suicide. It's not that I'm suicidal, but I'd rather just end my life than be homeless as a senior citizen if I have no family at that point. And I'd rather just end my life at 90 years old opposed to working 40 hours a week just to pay for the cost of living. And this is, again, only if I have no family. So if you have kids alive, then I think you don't have a right to kill yourself. And if you have parents alive that unconditionally love you, then you shouldn't kill yourself unless you have an internal issue that runs so deep. If your pain alive is greater than their pain will be when you're dead, then you have a right to kill yourself. But if you have no parents or no kids alive, then do whatever the fuck you want. I get why it's not legal, but it should be legal to assist people in suicide, and they should call it dying with integrity or dying with dignity. Specifically, if they're doing it because they're facing financial hardships and the government can't afford to provide them necessary resources that they need. Then another point that I want to use this incident to make is how big of a farce stand-up comedy is, generally speaking. The kid who killed himself was a comedian, and most people would say even when he was about to kill himself, he still tried to make other people laugh. And I see it from the opposite lens. When you're about to kill yourself, you're in no position to try to stand on stage and be funny. If someone's suicidal and they love doing stand-up, then I think it's a great idea for that person to do it as a coping mechanism, and I encourage them to do it. But get on stage for yourself and do it for your mental well-being. Don't do it as a favor for me as an audience member. If you want to use the stage as a form of therapy, that's amazing and I encourage it, but don't be shocked if I don't find the set funny, and don't be shocked when I say the art of stand-up comedy is flawed and generally speaking isn't conducive to humor. Someone on the brink of suicide dragging themselves out to some dive bar to do a spot at midnight on a Tuesday night isn't exactly the building blocks for humor, in my opinion. Whereas it was comedic gold when Ric Flair was recently a guest on Kill Tony like a week ago. He interrupted the show to give like some crazy old person rant, and the end of it, the culmination was that he's not comfortable making fun of people and he's going to leave the show. And Tony was like, no, don't leave. You don't have to make fun of people. Yo, just stay for the rest of the show. And then Ric Flair decided to stay. And then like 10 minutes later, the next time Tony started making fun of people, Ric Flair was like, that's it, I'm leaving. I've had enough. I'm not making fun of people who gave up their time. I was crying laughing. I was literally sitting there in a ball cracking up. But that's what I always say, yo. Like, it's real life humor that's funny, you know what I mean? Like, it's real shit that's funny. In my life, I've always found it hilarious when an old person makes a rant that makes no sense. And then if Ric Flair walking off the set wasn't funny enough, watching Shane Gillis and Luis J. Gomez capitalize on all of the low-hanging fruit Ric Flair jokes for the rest of the episode were all hilarious. I think Shane Gillis and Luis J. Gomez are professional funny people. Like, those are professional funny people in my opinion. But the funniest moments in life happen naturally, and it can't be manipulated through stand-up comedy. And that's why, in my opinion, Kill Tony is just the perfect machine, yo. And like I talk about not feeling funny when I would go out to do stand-up. Well, if I was about to kill myself, I really wouldn't feel funny when I go out to do a stand-up set. And if I'm going out to do some rehearsed material, then I'd feel so tired doing it. Like, this is such a fucking farce. I'd probably go on a rant like, I'm literally going to kill myself tonight, and you idiots paid $20 to huddle up inside a bar at midnight paying for overpriced drinks to listen to me recite some rehearsed jokes to you. And you think that's what getting out and living life is? But the point is, generally speaking, I don't think stand-up comedy is funny, and that doesn't make sense to people, but it gets highlighted when you see comedians committing suicide. When a comedian commits suicide, it's sad, but when that's where someone is mentally, they're not in any position to stand on stage and be genuinely funny. The last thing they need is a stage and a microphone, unless they're using it to air everything out or like using it as a coping mechanism. Do it for yourself, but don't do it for me. And if I knew a comic on stage was on the verge of suicide, I would fake laugh at every joke, hoping that they didn't kill themselves that night. And I'd go out and watch comedy every single night if I knew it meant that a comic wouldn't kill themselves. But don't get mad at me if I don't find it funny. Like, I could see going to comedy shows with the purpose of providing mental support to comedians, but not because I need a good laugh. And I've heard a joke like Maher times, that's how you know a comic's good, like if they kill themselves. And obviously I disagree with that sentiment. It's one thing that the comic's on stage playing into how he's suicidal, then it could be funny. But if he's just ignoring how he feels, then him standing on stage is a farce. It's dishonest if someone's on stage telling jokes when they're suicidal, you know what I mean? Unless they're telling jokes about being suicidal. A musician writing songs about pain is using it as an outlet, but doing comedy when you're in pain is almost a form of suppression, specifically when you're out there with prepared material that's unrelated to how you're actually feeling. And like I said, comedians committing suicide just highlights to me how contrived the art form is, but people think I'm a crazy person when I say as an audience member, I'm not really into stand-up comedy. There are rare exceptions like Camp Patterson when he says, do you know how hard it is to learn how to read when you can't read? That's the type of joke that's worthy of stage and needs the medium of stand-up comedy, but it's rare. But like I saw a clip of a comedian recently on YouTube and they started off their bit like, who here has ever farted during sex? And like the room lost their minds. Everybody's cracking up, slapping their knees. They're pointing, like shaking their head like, yes. Like that's what most stand-up comedy looks like to me. I have this theory that there's more bad stand-up comedy right now than in any point throughout human history. Rogan inspired a wave of people who shouldn't be doing stand-up comedy. And I'm all about doing it, even if you're not funny. If they'll give you a microphone and a stage, like get up there if it's something you want to do. I just can't believe people consistently pay money to go watch it as a form of entertainment. So ultimately, I'm all about someone doing comedy for themselves if they're suicidal. But when people are like, even when they were in such a bad state of mind, they still try to make other people laugh. My response is they're not doing me a favor if they're getting on stage and that's the state of mind that they're in, especially when I paid money to go to see the show. Don't look at me like I'm crazy because I don't see it as a form of entertainment worthy of my time and money. Like there's a video on YouTube called Travels, but they get increasingly worse. And it's a bunch of clips of travels in NBA games, and it's fucking hilarious. It's so funny how bad they travel sometimes, and then the clip could go two ways. It's funny when they get called for the travel and they start flipping out, acting like they didn't travel. Or they don't get called for the travel and the defender starts going crazy that the travel didn't get called. Either way, it's hilarious. But the point is, that video makes me laugh harder than stand-up comedy does. Even good stand-up comedy. And I'll just close out like with this one point because I just mentioned Tristan Bowling a minute ago. Like, I don't understand people. People's moves make no sense to me sometimes. And I'll preface this by saying the Austin comedy scene right now is overcrowded and it's easy to drown. I mean, some kid just killed themselves out here. It tells you all you need to know. But if you're part of the club, then this is where you want to be. You could move here and become one with the open mic ecosystem and build with people, but you're essentially rubbing two sticks together trying to create fire if you're trying to quote unquote make it by doing that. But if you're part of the club, then you could just bypass all of that and you do stuff like open up for Rogan at the Vulcan, like I heard Tristan Bowling said he did the last time he came out to Austin. They was talking about how being a door guy at the Comedy Store is a pipeline to a career. Well, so is winning a golden ticket on Kill Tony. You could ask Tony for stuff in bounds. Like, he's always happy to help out golden ticket winners. Being a door guy at the Comedy Mothership is essentially the same thing as being one at the Comedy Store. And if you're a golden ticket winner, Tony would be happy to see if there's any openings for you as a door guy. At worst, he'll get you on a waiting list. You know what I mean? He's not going to get mad at you if you're a golden ticket winner and you're like, yo, I want to move out to Austin. Could you see if Rogan will hire me as a door guy? But like at worst, let's say Tony can't get you a job as a door guy at the mothership. At least when you move here, you're part of the club and you're able to do spots at the mothership. It's like you skip the line if you're cool with them. It's almost like if you're not part of the club, you don't want to move here right now. But if you are part of the club, then this is where you want to be. So if I'm Tristan Bowling, who lives in Arizona, I would have been hyped when I found out that Kill Tony moved to Austin, and I would have been taking road trips out here once every few months to take advantage of the opportunity and to do a set on Kill Tony. And I would have told him, like, yo, I'm moving out here if I could make it work financially. But he only came to Austin like once when he lived in Arizona, and then he recently came to Austin again. And on this episode, he said he just moved out to New York City. Like, it's like career sabotage. That's the only way to explain it. He could be part of the club here, or he could move to New York City to just try to become accepted into the open mic ecosystem. But why would he not want to come out to where he's already part of the scene? It's one thing if he's not a golden ticket winner, but he has a golden ticket on Kill Tony. The last time he came out to Austin, he ended up opening for Joe Rogan, and now he decided to move out to New York City to pursue a comedy career. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And like I said, like, if you notified Tony before he moved out here, he would have had a job before he even moved out here. You know what I mean? Like, he would have moved here set up with a job. It's like you could move to where it's popping and where you've already leveled yourself up at, or you could move to a wasteland and start at the bottom. It just makes you wonder. And the thing that makes even less sense is he only came out here once when he lived driving distance away. Then he moves to expensive-ass New York and spends money to fly out here. If I was him, I would have been constantly coming out here when I lived around the corner. And then once I moved away, I would be like, yeah, now I'm trapped in these high monthly payments and I got to stop taking the Austin trips. And I'm not trying to hate on him. I just narrate what I see publicly and I use it to highlight the points I want to make. And this is one of them, how sometimes in life people just don't make sense. I feel like with these crafts, your career can really rely on getting opportunities. So it's crazy to watch someone move away from where they have a real opportunity. He could probably be a door guy at the mothership, open up for Tony on the regular and get introduced to a network of people and get up on Kill Tony whenever he wants. But instead he's moving to New York City to do open mics. It's literally career sabotage unless there's personal reasons that we're not privy to. But I don't care what I had going on in my personal life. If I did an art form and I had opportunity in that art form, I would follow the opportunity unless I had a family that I was responsible for. Yeah, and that's basically it for the episode. The last thing I have is something stupid at the end I want to mention, because a few years ago, I remember I was like offended because I was returning something on Amazon and the default payment option was to get your refund as Amazon credit. And I was looking at it like Amazon credit. Like, fuck that shit. That's how they try to get you. I don't want Amazon credit. I want my money back. But now when I'm returning stuff on Amazon, I'm like, money's money. Just put the credit in my Amazon account. That's all I really need in life. A roof over my head, food, weed, and Amazon credit. Sterm Worm, trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go.